I've got a performance. So,
I'll be sticking around.
ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe, and also welcome Folk East. Marvelous. We're in the middle of a lovely wood here. There's Veronica Chambers there. Justine sitting there. Hello.
Hello, hello.
So we've got assembled company. We have various people who announced last year at Harlequin, but I'm going to hand over to because this evening it's stories with Norman Perrin. Meanwhile, I should be doing stories here at Folk East, so I'm going to abdicate my responsibilities. I shall join you in about. I'm just going to mute myself, and then I shall come back in about 3/4 of an hour to outro. And I can't remember who's on next week. I probably haven't given it. I didn't do the. I didn't give it across to Waleed either. So that'll all work. I'm sure it'll work. It's been a bit of a hectic week.
I'm sure.
Moving and all that stuff. I'm now out of the flat and in the house in Gloucester. Well, I'm not actually in the house in Gloucester. I'm in the wood in Suffolk at the moment. But anyway, for now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and assembled company, please welcome Norman Perrin. Take it away, Norman.
Thank you, John. It's always a wonderful introduction. I feel more myself whenever you introduce me. Okay, then. It's wonderful to be here again because I know that in the woods, I don't know if we're live streaming onto a screen there, but I remember last year telling stories, and various stories have been kind of parading through my head. And this is the story that came to mind because I told it last year in the woods at Folk East. I was wandering through the woods and I heard a wonderful sound of a fiddle and a harp and a banjo making beautiful music. And there in the middle of a clearing, there were 3 people playing classical music on a fiddle, a harp, and a banjo. And when they finished, I said, that was wonderful. I would love to tell a story to that music. And they said, well, sure, why not? And so they picked up their instruments once more, and to the sound of these instruments, the harp, the fiddle, and the banjo, in the middle of the forest of Folk East, the story of the wood woman and the wood fairy. The young woman left every morning with a bundle of food, a spindle, and a bundle of flax to be spun into thread. And her mothers would send her off saying, work hard. And so the young girl would take these things and go into the forest. And along with her went the goats, all following her, dancing around her. For there was a spot in the middle of the forest where the grass was sweet and thick and green, and the goats would graze. And while they were grazing, she would take her spindle and spin the flax into thread. And at the end of the day, she would call to the goats. The goats would come and dancing around her back to her mother's house. Her mother would take the thread, and the next day they would do the same thing all over again. Now on this day, the young girl bid goodbye to her mother. The goats danced around her as she went into the forest, and she sat on the rock and she put her lunch down and she began to spin. She thought, it is such a long time until the fall when we can go dancing at the fair. when suddenly out of the forest there came the most beautiful woman, all dressed in green, tall and lovely as the dawn. The young girl saw her, and she was awestruck. As the young woman came up to her, he said, "Do you like to dance?" "Oh, yes, I would, but there is no music." "Ah," said the young lady, "the music is all around us. There is the wind and the leaves and the birds. They shall be our music. Will you dance with me to that music, my sweet, my love?" And the young girl looked her in the eye and said, "With all my heart." And she put down her spindle, and to the music of the forest and the birds and the nearby stream, she danced back and forth. And the young lass seemed to the young lass that the woman of the wood, her feet barely touched the ground, and they danced around and around and round, and time had no meaning until at last the sun was going towards the west, and the young girls, I must take my goats and go back to my mother. And she ran back, the goats following her with what little thread that she had spun. And when she got back to her mother looked at the little bit of thread that had been spun around on the spindle, and she didn't say much. But the daughter said, Mother, my fingers were sore. I will do better tomorrow. And the next morning, with thoughts of the beautiful woman of the wood in her mind, in her heart, she went to the clearing. Once again, she picked up the bundle of flax. Once again, the goats were dancing all around her. And once again, she meant to work. But out of the shadows and sunlight came that beautiful woman. The beautiful woman said, "Will you dance with me, my love? Will you dance with me, my sweet?" And the young girl put down the bundle of flax and said, "With all my heart." And they danced the day away. The goats were dancing around them too. They have their own music, always. Until at last, when the sun was going down, and the young woman realized, I have done nothing today at all. I've spun nothing. My mother will be very, very angry with me. "Oh, is that all?" said the woman of the wood. And she picked up with the bundle, and it seemed to spin in her hands. And before you knew it, there was a huge ball of thread upon the spindle. She said, "Perhaps this will make your mother happy." She gave it to the young woman. And the young woman went back with thoughts of the music of the leaves and the trees and the water in her heart and her soul, and back to her mother. And her mother was very happy to see the huge bundle of thread. "You have been working very, very hard. You are a good daughter." And the daughter smiled. The next morning, once again, the daughter eagerly put together her bundle of food and flax and went into the forest. Quickly, the goats could barely keep up with her, and she came to the clearing, and there was the beautiful woman waiting for her. As soon as the woman saw her, she said, "Will you dance with me, my love? Will you dance with me, my sweet?" "With all my heart," said the young woman, and she put down the bundle of flax, and they danced the day away, and the goats were dancing around as well. Meanwhile, the mother, when she had finished her morning chores, she began to unwind the thread upon the spindle, and she unwound and unwound and unwound and unwound. It seemed there was no end to the thread, and the room began to fill with that thread, and soon there was enough thread there for a room full of linen. And she says, "In God's name, what is this?" And as soon as she said the name God, the thread upon the spindle came to an end, and the spindle was emptied. And in the forest, the beautiful woman of the wood stopped, and a sad look came upon her face. And she said, "Our time is done, our dance is over, and I must go, and I will not see you again. But I will give you a parting gift for you to always remember me by, my love, my sweet." And she reached down and picked up the yellow golden leaves that had been littering the ground and gave that to the young girl and filled her apron with it. "There," she said, "now you will always remember me." And she walked into the shadows of the forest and disappeared. And with her heart full of wonder, the young girl walked back, the goats following her. And as she looked down into her apron full of the leaves, she thought, "What gift is this? The forest is full of such golden leaves." And she was about to throw them out, but then she thought, perhaps the goats will like it for bedding. Mother would hate me to waste it. And so she kept the leaves and came to her hut. And there was her mother, ready with 1,001 questions, saying, "What's been happening? Why did you?" And young girl was forced to tell her all about the beautiful young woman, the 2 days of dancing, and the thread that she had been given the day before. And when she had finished the story, her mother said, "Ah, now I understand. You have met the woman of the wood. And it's a good thing that you're a young woman, because if you had been a man, she would have ripped you into 2 pieces." Now, the young girl said, "So, mother, I have to tell you this, that she gave me a gift, but I do not understand the gift. She gave me a pile of leaves." And she opened up her apron. And there in her apron, instead of yellow leaves, there was yellow golden leaves, solid gold. There was enough gold there to keep them in wealth for the rest of their lives. And so they built themselves a fine house. The young lass, whatever happened to her, this story does not say. But all who came to their doorstep, none went away hungry, none went thirsty. And as for the young lass, when the sun was going down, the shadows were long, and the sunlight was golden, she would look into the forest and remember the words of the woman of the wood. "Will you dance with me, my love? Will you dance with me, my sweet?" Well, not quite the forest music, but I do my best. Now, the next story I'm going to tell is a little different. There's one we're in the forest still, but this is the forest of Thailand. I think I'm going to go for as many woods as I can, and it'll be a while before we're out of the woods. So once upon a time, and a long time ago it was, and if I was living then, I wouldn't be sitting here to tell you this story. There was a hunter who lived on the edge of a forest in Thailand. And he was a great and powerful hunter. He was one of those hunters who had muscles here. He had muscles there. He had muscles everywhere. And he had a bow and an arrows, and he had a knife and a sword. And he went into the forest. He would shoot at the animals. He would shoot at the birds. He even shot at the bugs for practice, for target practice. In short, the hunter terrorized the entire forest. Now, one day when the hunter went into the forest, deeper and deeper and deeper. He saw nothing, he heard nothing until at last he came to a clearing. And in the middle of the clearing, there's this huge, huge, very large tree. And in the middle of that tree was a little yellow bird. And as soon as the hunter saw the little yellow bird saw the hunter. The little yellow bird stared at the hunter. The little yellow bird winked at the hunter, and the little yellow bird went, yeah, 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 yeah. Now that is a very insulting sound anywhere on the entire planet, but especially in Thailand, is the sound that children use to insult each other. And this was the great and powerful hunter. How dare you insult me, a great and powerful hunter, said the hunter. And the little yellow bird stared at the hunter, winked at the hunter, and went, yeah, 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 yeah. That was too much for that hunter. He reached back, he pulled out an arrow, he put it into his bow, and he shot that little yellow bird right through the heart. And the yellow bird fluttered to the ground. That's the end of that little yellow bird, said the hunter, but it's not the end of the story. Because when the hunter went over to pull the arrow out, the little yellow bird opened up both of its bright shining eyes, looked at the hunter, winked at the hunter, and the little yellow bird went, yeah, 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 yeah. The hunter was furious. He took that little yellow bird and he broke it up into 100 little pieces, and he scattered those pieces around in a big circle. And he said, that's the end of that little yellow bird. That's not the end of the story. For every single piece, louder than ever, from the little yellow bird, louder than ever came, yeah, 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 yeah. That hunter ran around and he gathered up all of those pieces of yellow bird. And he dug a hole. It was a deep hole, a very deep hole. And he buried that hunter so deep. And he listened and he said, that is the end of that little yellow bird. But as soon as he finished saying these words, from deep inside the forest, he could hear very faintly, but very clearly, as if it was the earth itself speaking. The hunter was furious and ran and angry, and he dug up that little yellow bird and he chopped down a tree and he made a bonfire and he threw the pieces of the yellow bird on top of the bonfire, and the flames went crackle, crackle, crackle up into the sky and down, crackle, crackle, crackle to ashes. And then, to make sure, the hunter took the ashes and scattered them to the four winds. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. And there was silence. That's the end of that little yellow bird. And the hunter turned to leave. But when he reached the edge of the clearing, he stopped and he turned around. And his eyes opened wide. For what did he see? On every single branch of every single twig of every single tree, there was millions upon billions upon trillions of little yellow birds. And every single one of those little yellow birds stared at the hunter. Every single one of those little yellow birds winked at the hunter. And every single one of those little yellow birds at the top of its voice went, yeah, 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 yeah. And the hunter screamed. He took his bow, he broke it over one knee. He took his arrows, he shattered them over the other knee. And he ran and he ran and he ran and he ran and he ran. He ran until he came to a mountain in the Himalayas. And there he became a vegetarian Buddhist. And all who went by, he would say, by his hut, he would say to them, be kind to the birds. Be kind to the animals. and especially a little yellow bird. And so that forest is at peace to this very day. And if you go there, you'll see a little yellow bird. It'll look at you. It'll stare at you. It'll wink at you. It'll go, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that is that is one of the stories that I really enjoy telling. So, and since we're in the forest, let's stay in the forest, okay? And I have to say, I'll give credit. I first got that story from Dan Yashinsky. Dan got it from a book of participation stories from the United States. And I wish I could proper credit to it, but David Holt is one of, I think, the collectors and the authors to it. What they do to that little yellow bird, I think, is rather horrendous. I cut it down to a few notches there. But this story, too, starts at the edge of a forest. This story goes into the forest. And, well, what comes out of the forest, we shall see. Once upon a long time ago in North Africa, there was a woodcutter who worked hard. And by the grace of God, each day he would go into the forest and find enough wood fallen from the trees to load upon his donkey. And he would take that loaded donkey loaded with wood to his wife. And his wife would take the wood and into the village and sell it for firewood. And then she would buy, with the money she made, she would buy enough food for that day and that day only. For the next morning, the woodcutter would once again have to go into the forest and find wood. He couldn't cut the trees down. It was against the law. So he had to wait for the wind to blow. And it happened that this day, when he went into the forest leading the donkey along, he had to go this way and that way. The wind had been still for days, and there was no wood, little bits and pieces here. And he loaded that on the donkey, but it wasn't very much. And so he had to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the forest, until at last he came to a part of the forest he'd never been to before. And he came to a clearing. And in the middle of the clearing, there was the most beautiful tree that he had ever seen. For it was covered in red and yellow and white blossoms. And there was the sweet scent coming from those blossoms, and nectar was dripping from them, and buzzing around the blossoms of that great tree were insects and birds, and they were drinking and eating the nectar, and the birds were eating the insects. In fact, some of the birds just lay upon the ground on their backs with their legs up in the air, the wings out, their beaks open, and the nectar dripped into their open mouths. And the insects were so fat they couldn't fly, and so they fell into the mouth of the open beaks of the birds. And the woodcutter saw this, and he thought, God has provided for these birds of the forest so that they have to move neither beak nor claw for food or for drink. Well, and my wife, we're much more important than these birds. And so we should be taken care of as these birds are taken care of in the forest. So he made a resolution right there and then that he would go home and stay in bed until God provided for him and his wife as the birds were provided for in the forest. And so he took the donkey with what little wood that it had, and they went straight back to his house, and he tied the donkey up. He went into his small dwelling, and he went to his sleeping mat, and he went to sleep. And his wife came in from the garden. He said, husband, why are you back? The donkey, there's no wood on the donkey. We do not have enough. Go and take the donkey, go into the forest and get more wood. He woke up and she had to repeat all those questions. And when she had heard his explanation that about the birds and his vow, he said, I will stay in this bed until you are provided for, and myself, as the birds are provided for in the forest. And he went back to sleep. Well, the wife didn't know what to do. So she took what little wood there was. She went into the marketplace. She made a couple coins. She bought a little bit of rice, and she came back. And with some vegetables in her garden, she made up a simple meal. And then at the end of it, she said, husband, the food is prepared. Come and eat. And he said, I have made a vow before God that I will not leave this bed until you and I have provided for, as birds are provided for in the forest. Bring the food to me. And she was forced to bring the food to him. And he ate. And when he was finished, he went back to sleep. And his wife went to sleep beside him. Next morning, the sun was up. The wife was up. The husband was laying down. She said, husband, wake up. We have nothing. We have no food. We have no wood. Go into the forest with a donkey. And he repeated, I will, well, you know what he said. And when she heard these words, she didn't know what to do. And so she went outside to have a good cry. What can you do with a stubborn husband like that? Well, as she went out into the yard, she saw the neighbor. And there was the neighbor coming over and saying, excuse me, I happen to notice that your donkey is still tied up beside your house. And I happen to have need of a donkey. And would you be willing to let me use your donkey? I'll give you a couple copper coins for them. Ah, well, that was good luck, said the wife. And she was glad to take the coins, hand over the rope. Donkey went into the forest. She went into the marketplace to buy some food. And the man took the donkey into the forest. Now, why did he want a donkey? He had a dream. And he was a man who believed in dreams, because the dream told him this. There was a certain tree, and under the tree there was a small cave, and in the small cave there was a larger cave, and in that larger cave there were piles of copper and silver and gold coins. And that he could go and take those coins, the gold and the silver, but leave the copper alone. And he could not understand why, but who understands dreams? Gold is gold, so is silver. And he went into the forest leading the donkey. He found the tree. He found a little hole. He began to dig, and the hole got larger, and the hole fell down, the earth fell, revealing a larger cave. And by the dim light and the dust, he could see gleaming in the shadows gold and silver and copper coins. And he went down into the cave with the two bags. He loaded one bag with silver and the other bag with gold, and he loaded them onto the donkey. Oh, that poor donkey. It was the heaviest weight it ever carried in its life. And the man was about to lead the donkey away when he thought, there's a small fortune in copper coins in that cave. It'd be a shame to leave them behind. What harm can there be? He let go of the rope of the donkey. He went down. He began to take scoops of clinking, clanking copper coins. He stuffed his pockets. He stuffed his pants. He stuffed his shirt. And he was so busy stuffing the coins into his shirts and pants and pockets that he did not hear the wind, which had been still for so long, begin to blow. Shh. So loud is the clinking, clanking of the coins, he did not hear the tree begin to groan. And he did not hear the tree with a great groan fall over the crash. He leaves the story at this point. Meanwhile, the donkey, waiting patiently, waited for the man to come back, but he did not. And so the donkey followed his inconsiderably long nose down this pathway and that pathway until he came back to his own home. And there, loaded down with the 2 heavy bags, he let out a great hee-haw, which is to say, I'm hungry, I'm loaded, someone come feed me and take these loads off my back. A donkey can put a lot into a single hee-haw. And so the wife got up, she came out, she saw the donkey, she saw the 2 bags, she did not see the neighbor, so she assumed that the bags were for her. She opened up one bag, it was full of silver coins. She opened up the other bag, it was full of gold coins. And so she dug her hands into the silver and the gold, and she went back into their hut with her eyes full of wonder. She said to her husband, "Husband, husband, husband, get up, for God has indeed provided." The husband opened up his eyes and he saw the handful of gold and silver coins. And he smiled. And then he frowned. "Oh, wife," he said, "it is good that God has provided. But what God has provided, the taxman will take away. What will we do if they will say we have stolen this treasure?" And it was the turn of the wife to smile this time. So do not fear for that, my husband. What God has given, a woman's wit can keep. And this is what happened. The next morning, all of their neighbors in the village all found a small coin or 2 on their doorsteps. And each one of them wondered, but they figured an angel had given it to them for their good behavior. And so they were not surprised to see the woodcutter and his wife loading up the donkey with 2 large bags and some of their goods, and said, "We have too received a coin, and we've decided to use it to travel to see some relatives whom we haven't seen for a very long time. We'll see you eventually." And they went down the road, and they traveled until they came to a place where their names were not known. And they built themselves a fine, fine house, a house provided by fortune and by God. And they knew how to be generous, for all came to their door. None went away thirsty, none went away hungry. And I know this is a true story, for when I visited North Africa, I came to that household and I was welcomed, and they gave me food, and they gave me drink. The greatest treasure they gave me was this story, which I've now told to you. So
Sky going.
Yes.
What's that?
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Oh,
I haven't been reading
that's
comments.
beautiful.
So, John, it's been so long since
That's
I've done this.
amazing.
How long
This
is the session?
big white ball in the sky that wasn't burning people or too hot. It was just a beautiful moon. And the moon stood up there going, "Hi guys, hope you don't mind me being here." And the people were going, "No, moon, it's so wonderful to see you. Even John Rowe is happy to see you." Well, I mean, well, thank you very much, but obviously got a bit embarrassed, but well, you know what? I'm really proud that I'm in the sky, and he made himself really, really big, really huge in the sky, and he looked down going, "Thank you all for making me feel so welcome."
Okay.
And
Okay.
then sun woke up.
And away we're
Glowing, glowing, glowing. Did you sleep
Okay.
well, Moon?
Is this your
Oh,
friend, John?
wonderfully, wonderfully. I'm ready to glow again. Glow, 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 glow.
At the cafe, mute John, perhaps.
Oh, okay. The moon said nothing. But just so happened that after 8 hours of glowing, the sun went, You know what? I still think I need to catch up on a little bit of sleep.
Back to you, Norman.
Okay, I will put that as one of the more interesting interludes I've had on Zoom in a long time.
All we need now is popcorn.
Yeah, now I feel like I need to tell a story about the moon or the sun or something like that. And I have a short story now, but I was about to ask John about how long these send. I do believe what 45 minutes, right? Yeah. Okay then. Well, I think
You have some time.
yeah, I have a little bit of time. Well, this is a story. I'm going to tell two more, I think. One is called Buying a Dream, and the other one is about the sun. Long time ago, there's two woodcutters. I love woodcutters, my favorite kinds of stories. And they went into the mountains and hills of Japan. And after cutting their wood, they would take a rest, they would eat their lunch, and then they would cut some more wood and they go back down to their respective spouses. Now, one day while they were resting, the young fellow saw his friend who was sleeping, and as he was watching him sleeping, a butterfly emerged out of his mouth and flew away. And when the butterfly was gone, he woke up his friend. And it said nothing about the butterfly, but his friend said, I had a very strange dream. I dreamt that in the far off city of Kyoto, there was a very wealthy man with a beautiful garden. In the back was a chrysanthemum bush, and underneath the chrysanthemum bush, there was a pot full of gold coins. Now, what a silly dream is that? So that's a very good dream. I would love to have a pot of gold coins. I tell you what, I'll buy your dream. What? It's just a dream. I'll give it to you. No, you can't give dreams. Dreams have to be bought, paid for. And he took what a few coins he had and he gave it to his friend. And his friend laughed and he said, well, I know who's buying the drinks for me tomorrow. And so the two went back laughing and telling each other stories. Now, the young man next day told his wife about the dream, and she was an understanding woman. Dreams are powerful things, she said. I've heard many good things come from a dream. And the man said, I'm going to follow my dream. And so he packed some food, a bit of rice, and he went traveling and traveled and traveled and traveled until he came to Kyoto. And by the time he reached Kyoto, he was out of food, he was out of money, his clothes were dusty and torn, but he found the place described by the dream, and he knocked at the door. A servant came. He said, what are you doing here? What can I do for you? And the young man said, I've heard that there is a plant, a chrysanthemum of great beauty, and I wish to see it because underneath it there's a great treasure of a pot of gold coins. And the servant said, wait here. And he went back to his master, and his master heard the story and he laughed. He said, well, it's a silly story, but there is such a beautiful plant in the back garden. And they went and they investigated and they dug, and sure enough, there was a pot of gold coins. And the rich man said, this is too much for that peasant out there. I think we'll keep the coins. But as soon as he said these words, whoosh, the coins disappeared like a bunch of bees buzzing, and the pot was empty. Well, they invited the man in, they gave him tea, and they said, you can dig if you wish, but we do not know what you will find. And so the young man was given a shovel, went and dug, and it was easy to dig because the earth had already been worked. He came to the pot, he lifted the lid, and the pot was empty. And for a moment, he said, "You must think me very foolish. I'm sorry to have disturbed you." And he put the lid back, and he put the pot in a hole. He covered the hole up, and he took the long, long journey, difficult journey home. And as he traveled, he suffered terribly because he had little to eat. He had to beg all the way. And as he went over a bridge over a river close to his home, he thought to himself, I cannot return. I've had to borrow money for this journey, and I have nothing to pay them back with. And for a moment, he thought of ending his life in the deep waters of the river. But then he thought, my friends expect me back. My wife expects me back. I will go and face my fate. And so he went and crossed that river. He came to his own house, and there was his wife waiting for him patiently. He says, "Oh, husband, it's so good to have you back. Oh, husband, a wonderful thing has happened." What? He said, "Well, there's a wonderful sound and a roaring sound, and I went inside and, well, come and see." And he went inside, and there in their fireplace was a pile of golden coins. The coins that were meant for him and him only. The dream that he had bought, the dream that at the end he despaired, but he still believed in. And so, as these stories end, there was happiness and joy. The village prospered because they helped them all. And this is the story again of when those who receive riches also have the riches of generosity. And so may we reach and meet with such generosity and give such generosity in our lives. And I think I will end my storytelling here. Pot of gold with a journey, despair, and then finally joy. Thank you.
Don, you're
Thank you,
muted. Oh, there
Norman.
you are.
So Norman,
Yes,
was that the end of your set?
I can do one more story. I do have.
Well, I know it would be very convenient for me if it was the end of your set.
But I've got another
because-
10-hour story to tell. The story of
No.
Gilbert.
I'm attempting. If you see, I'm attempting to do two things. I'm attempting to perform here, and I timed it exactly. I timed my last story to finish at this exact moment when you should be finishing. So
Okay then. Well, for me, this set of Into the Forest stories, that's, I think, a good story to finish on.
yes, marvelous. So, well, thank you, Norman. Now, I haven't the faintest idea of what's happening next week because I haven't brought my diary with me. I'm hoping that I put on the schedule for a month schedule and not just 2 weeks. Have I got anything up there for next Friday? No. And I haven't got, and I'm hoping, I said we'll leave the stuff, but if anyone can tell me who I promised next Friday to, that would be marvelous. If anyone's listening and said, I'm on next Friday, that would be great because then we can get it in the schedule. But what I do know is that on Tuesday, we've got our International Young Tellers. And I think Hala's coming back because she's fundraising for her sister to go to university from Palestine, which is going very well. And so thank you, everyone. And but Baba C to everyone has said something. So Baba C, what have you put in the chat?
No, I was clapping, but I was reminding you, I was asking you what was happening next Friday, because we all know next Tuesday is Young Storyteller Internationals. We know that.
Yeah, well, I really don't know what's happening next Friday, and I've got,
well,
because
you're in
I
good
moved,
company.
because I moved, I know the diary that told me everything was sitting on my kitchen table, but it's I've been trying to do my festivals and move house and everything simultaneously, and I drove off, and I'm not actually back home till after next Friday, so it might be a bit random. So I shall put it in the chat on World Storytelling Cafe chat. If I promise next Friday to anyone, and if I haven't, I might just call on my on one of my friends who might be wearing blue at this moment. But
That you, Mike, wearing blue.
oh yeah, there's several wearing blue.
We'll figure out something.
We'll find something, but anyway, on that terribly confused note, thank you, Norman Perrin. One more round of applause for Norman Perrin.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I shall say good night to you. Waleed, if you know what's going on, please message me. But we'll do. Can we have a big round of applause from the Woods, please?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So and David, thank you for your support, and Janet and Mike and Terry in Ohio. So we're well represented from the far side of the Atlantic tonight. Marvelous. But meanwhile, good afternoon or good night or good evening wherever you are in this big wide world.
Right.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Until the next time, to be continued. Good seeing you, David. Mike, always a pleasure. Janet, great. Oh, Janet's gone, but good seeing everybody.
Yeah,
Good
good to
Janet,
see
you've
you.
upset her.
Good to see you, Babasil. Happy birthday for last week.
Oh yeah,
I know
I'm
your
still
celebrations
celebrating.
are probably still going on all month.
Oh yeah, oh yes, and supposedly I have a dinner to go to on Sunday, and I had a dinner that had to be rescheduled because a dear friend of mine is going in for either hip or knee surgery, so we had to reschedule that dinner. But anyhow, I'm excited. It's fun. I don't turn 71 all the time, but when I do, I'm surrounded with friends and family and lots of love.
Yeah. Well, may it be the same when you're 72.
Hey, yes.
I'm not looking
All right,
forward to
Jim.
being 71. No, I have to look back at being 71.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Good night,
All
guys.
right. Until
Cheerio.
the next time.
Thanks,
We
Wally.
continue. Thank you, Wally. I think he's waiting for me to say, see out.